Hello and welcome back to Buckle Up. I'm Harry King and this is the Ford Puma ST Hybrid. And I'm going to try and find out if it's still a proper fast Ford. First things first, we have already reviewed the Puma on this channel. Rob did an excellent video on it some time ago, depending on when you're watching this. Link up there if you would like to see a full practical review of what one of these cars is like. You can watch that. I'm going to speed around and focus on the driving because that's really what separates this from the standard car. Of course, we do have a few little touches that separate it in the styling department as well. I've got Ford Performance written on my front splitter. It's not a real front splitter, it's just for show really. And I do have a few ST badges around the place as well. We'll get onto them as we move around the car. In general, I like this. I like the fact the badges now move down into the grille. It does make this look slightly more purposeful. It looked a bit froggy before, but just shifting that focus seems to have improved things. Here at the side we have a lovely flash of red from the brake calipers to denote a more sporty setup. They sit behind 19-inch alloy wheels wrapped in Continental tyres. I've got black mirror caps, a black streak down the side of the car as well. And this does have the optional both black contrast roof and panoramic opening sunroof. Right here at the back we have one of the aforementioned ST badges and also twin exit exhaust, so you know this is the hot one. Puma written out in large friendly letters. But let's open up the boot because ultimately this is still a family vehicle or a family crossover, so this probably matters to you. Over 450 litres in here, and you retain all of the Puma's usual practicality. So if I lift up this false floor, we reveal the MegaBox, where you can fit many things. As you can probably see from the B-roll, I used this to transport a potted plant this week, which went in flawlessly. Well, apart from dropping a few needles. Anyway, you can also pop the boot floor down to the level of the top of the MegaBox if you want to maximise large load area, or you can raise it up and then it sits fairly flush with the back of the boot, and when you fold the seats down it'll be a nice continuous load space, offering over 1,200 litres. Lots of practicality. There's also a 12-volt socket and a couple of hooks in here, all the handy bits you need, and also the world's flimsiest parcel shelf. Which I know my colleagues hate, but I personally don't mind it. Shall we see how they've updated the interior? Things are okay here in the back. You've got charging ports, seat back pockets and door pockets, but not much else. There's space for children, but that's kind of it. Up here in the front, things start to get really good, thanks in no small part to these Ford Performance seats. Adjustable in just about every way you could possibly need, even extra leg length, and you've got a proper handbrake. You know, for handbrake turns. Let's get on to the main event though. The reason you buy a car like this is for how it drives. And this does drive very well indeed. So let's start with some basic stats. This has 170 PS, just under 250 Newton meters of torque. 0 to 62 takes 7.4 seconds, which is definitely in hot hatch realms. People seem to be generally a bit disappointed about this because what we used to get was a 1.5 litre turbocharged engine and a 6-speed manual, and that had 200 PS and it was a bit faster. And I do understand, yes, this isn't as fast. However, what this is much less polluting, which means Ford are allowed to keep selling it. This is not necessarily the car that Ford would choose to make should there be no restrictions at all. It is, however, the car they have to make because of, you know, policy. And that doesn't make it a bad car. There's lots of grunt here. An amazing amount of grunt considering that it's only a 1 litre engine under the bonnet. I also have a 7-speed automatic transmission with flappy paddles. It's got a sports mode. I have a sports setting in general that makes the dials go orange and holds the revs and gives me a change light actually, and I can start just pinging up and down the gears if I want to. Very responsive indeed. If I pop that back out of sports mode, and yeah, I'm in drive. And to go along with all of that, I have fabulous steering. This is some of the best steering feel you can buy in any car. that's sold in 2026. I do have a problem with the shape of the steering wheel itself. It is odd. It's kind of squared, and I don't know if this radius here is the same size as a normal steering wheel, but it makes it feel massive. And it is slightly blocking the left-hand side of my driver's display. So if you're using Waze, you can't use your speedometer on Waze anymore, which is a bit irritating. I also do wish the seats went lower. If I sit up completely straight, I can touch the ceiling with my head, which isn't ideal. I would like to be lower down. However, the seats themselves are amazing. They feel so comforting and sporty. And actually, in general, it's not a bad seating position. I just wish I could get lower. If I had a manual, it would feel quite a long way down, but I don't, so it kind of doesn't matter as much. There's actually plenty of room in general up here. It's just that because of this over-large steering wheel and the high seats, it maybe feels a little more cramped than it has to. It's worth noting I am 5'11" or 180 centimetres tall, whichever takes your fancy, and I can just about fit in the back seat if I have to, but I wouldn't want to for any length of time. I have all the normal practicality up here that you would have in the standard car as well. Cup holders, glove box, door pockets, underarm storage. None of that's gone away. I've still got my Bang & Olufsen sound system as well. And in fact, this comes with pretty much every bit of kit on it that you could possibly want. The only options, as I've mentioned, are the contrast roof, the panoramic sunroof that opens, a detachable tow bar, which this is also fitted with, and then there is a £1,000 ST handling pack. And unfortunately, it is not fitted to this car, so I cannot tell you whether or not it's worth it. What I will say is this handles brilliantly without it. The turn-in is so sweet, and you don't struggle for traction, really. I mean, there being a little bit less power through the front wheels probably helps with that, but it's so sure-footed, it doesn't dart about under acceleration, and if you hoy it into a corner, it just seems to hang on in a way that you wouldn't expect a crossover to. But that's my other point of contention with the Ford Puma. In general, I don't really buy this as a crossover. This is a hatchback. It's some ridiculous amount taller than the Fiesta, like less than 4 centimetres taller in the roofline, and obviously it's slightly more raised off the ground, so actually in terms of body height it's going to be pretty much the same. It is a crossover in name only, and that's good for us being car enthusiasts, because, you know, we have to live with what the tastes of the masses are. You can't just make cars for car enthusiasts. There's not enough of us to justify it, and most of us don't buy cars brand new anyway. But if Ford can get away with making a hatchback that they can call a crossover, and then make a version of it that drives really, really well, that means there's an interesting car for us to go and buy whenever it does reach our price point. Let's have a think about the rivals then. We've got the Mini Cooper, which has more power and is just as good to drive. However, if you want to buy the 3-door, and you do want to buy the 3-door, it's nowhere near as practical. You've got the Fabia 130, very similar power output, very similar, but just not quite as sweet to drive. This feels more focused in the handling department. And then you've got the Polo GTI, which is more powerful than the Fabia, but actually has less feel. Otherwise, there pretty much aren't any B-segment hot anythings other than that. I mean, there's a couple of electric ones, but I suspect if you're interested in this car, you're not interested in buying one of them. I love the 600e Scorpionissima by Abarth, but when it will only do 200 miles on a good day, it's hard to recommend against something like this. Price, well, this one as tested is in the £36,000 region, and that is where they're going to be. If you take no options at all, you might get it down to around 34, but that's sort of the money you're going to be paying. That's fairly hefty compared to the rivals. However, this is a larger, more practical vehicle in all other respects, so potentially a bit more of a one-car solution, because despite this being a B-segment crossover, other than being maybe a bit narrow in the cabin, there's not much between this and a C-segment hatchback. in terms of practicality. So actually, it's almost more of a Focus ST replacement than a Fiesta ST replacement. It is, though, all things considered, a really rather compelling package. I think, though, before I go any further, I'll actually go back and do a proper conclusion. So that is the ST tested, and what am I thinking? Well, I ultimately have to reflect on the fact that this probably isn't as exciting to drive as a 200 horsepower manual version would be. However, it is better to drive than literally any other car in the segment. It's better to drive than most of the cars, period. If you want something that's engaging as a normal car, which is what hot hatchbacks do, ultimately, that's what they're for, this is an amazing choice. And I do believe it should be categorised as a hot hatchback rather than a crossover. I mean, look at it. It's hatchback height. Ultimately, what I'm saying is I really like this car, and I would strongly recommend checking one out if you're interested in a nice, sporty driving experience. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. If you go down into the description, you'll find all the links to all our social medias. You'll also find a couple of ways you can directly support us. We have channel memberships right here on YouTube, and we also have a merch store where you can buy yourself some fresh threads. So please go and do one or all of those things, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.